On a day we've had a high-profile exit of the US Ambassador Nancy Powell, we have India's top diplomat, Sujata Singh, with us. Welcome to Headlines Today, ma'am. Foreign Secretary, when you were taking over, many people felt, your critics felt, that you would be a very soft Foreign Secretary. But you're really demonstrating during the Devyani Khobragade affairs that you were indeed an iron lady in many ways. You were very tough and told the US in very clear terms that this was unacceptable. Did you, when you went to Washington, did you make it very clear to them that this entire episode was unwarranted and India felt really cheated because US was a close friend of India?
Saurabh, first let me tell you that I completely reject all these adjectives of soft and iron lady and tough, cheated. This is not the terminology of diplomacy. For the record, the episode had not happened while I was in Washington. It happened after I left. And basically, I think that one deals with situations when one deals with important partners, with countries that one has very intensive interactions with. One is frank in talking to them, which is the manner in which one should discuss the issues that are concerned. So after the Devyani Khobragade episode, we did make our views on this clear to the United States, and thereafter we worked together with them in finding a resolution.
But I believe you did convey to Washington that the role of the US ambassador to Delhi wasn't very helpful, because obviously ambassador is supposed to do some objective reporting, but in this case we believe we have credible reports to suggest that her reports to Washington wasn't in the correct line.
I'm not sure where your credible reports come from, and I will certainly not share with you what I said to the State Department or did not say to the State Department. I believe that there are certain issues that should stay out of the media purview, and I don't intend to go into that at all.
But you did convey your displeasure, isn't it? You did speak out and said that this shouldn't have been done. It was not a civilized behavior. Let's jog your memory for a minute. Did you feel that this was a civilized behavior on the part of the US administration?
Look, I don't think that you should be using words such as civilized, such as cheated. This is not the language of diplomacy. Let me repeat. There are certain things that are done which perhaps we would not have done. There are certain issues with which I would perhaps have had a different point of view, and I convey them in the manner that I feel appropriate.
But are you looking forward to a new chapter with a new American ambassador being appointed and coming to New Delhi?
You know, there are no new chapters. It's an ongoing chapter. It's an ongoing narrative. And in the narrative that we have with our partners, there are different issues, there are different events, and there is always a common thread of determining to resolve whatever issues come our way together in a spirit of cooperation.
But you do think that there is some repair work wanted or required to mend Indo-US ties? Because certainly it did take a hit. There was a sense of outrage all across the country, and obviously even in the run-up to the campaigning in Indian elections, this issue has been raised by several politicians.
India and the United States have a strategic partnership. They are one of our closest strategic partners. We have a full spectrum relationship with them that extends from defense to science and technology to energy and to a whole lot of issues. I don't think that you should just take one issue out of context and talk about a hit being. I don't see it in that manner at all. I see it as an ongoing relationship that both sides are trying very hard to nurture and to progress.
Foreign Secretary, let's talk about another important country, Pakistan. And in the run-up to the campaigning in Indian elections, there have been a spate of terror attacks. In some ways, there have been terrorists who have been arrested, and all the leads now point to Pakistan. Are you concerned that the establishment in Pakistan is not serious about the peace process with India? Because for India, democracy is sacred, and Indian elections are an integral part of Indian democracy.
I'd agree with you completely on that. Democracy is sacred, and the election process is the most sacred of all the aspects of our democratic process. And this is something that anybody in government of India will tell you, that there is no way that anyone in India will countenance any disruption from anywhere to our election process. That is a message that is loud and clear.
But do you think that this will impact on the relationship that we have with Pakistan? Because there are clear links that as we talk, terrorist groups are being funded by them. There are people who are infiltrating into Indian territory and with clear designs.
You know, we have at all times our interests in view, our priorities in view, and the safeguarding of our critical interests. That is something that is always first and foremost in our mind. And we will take every step that we need to take to defend them.
But you think that peace process cannot go on normally till the time Pakistan stops cross-border terrorism against India?
Naturally, that's self-evident.
Okay. What about 26/11 attacks? We haven't had any closure to that. Where have we reached as we talk now? Do you think that Pakistan is really serious about doing or taking any credible action against 26/11 perpetrators?
Well, the trial is going on. Let's see where it ends.
What about people like Hafiz Mohammed Saeed? They keep on having these rallies, anti-India rhetoric that keeps on happening, and all under the watch of the Pakistani government. So what do you have to say to them? They've just had a new ambassador, high commissioner who's just come in. What is the message that you've sent to the Pakistani government?
The message to the Pakistani government is that India stands ready to extend the hand of friendship, but for that to happen, the process of terrorism and the sponsoring of cross-border terrorist activity has to stop. There has to be closure to what happened in Mumbai. The people involved have to be brought to justice.
Foreign Secretary, one of the issues, obviously, the Sri Lankan government is very happy that India has, in a way, changed its voting pattern at the UN in Geneva. So, was it caused by the fact that there are elections which are just going to happen, and the government felt that this is not going to in any way impact if India were to abstain from this vote?
The resolution itself was quite different from the resolution of previous years. You would have noticed that. So it called for a different response, and we decided to abstain. Simple.
Were you worried that third countries can then use this kind of a language or this kind of a resolution in, say, an issue like Kashmir?
Well, let me say that the resolution was intrusive. That was very clearly explained in our explanation of vote. And we did not want an external mechanism, an intrusive investigative mechanism to, we did not want to vote for such a mechanism to play out in our neighborhood.
What about China, Foreign Secretary? You know, we have been talking to China on the boundary for a very long time, but we've had these spate of intrusions. We had this incident, last year, Daulat Beg Oldie, and what is a problem with the relationship? Why is that we cannot agree on a forward movement on the boundary settlement with China?
I think, Saurabh, that you are as well aware as anybody else in the foreign policy establishment is that there are well-recognized mechanisms to deal with these issues. You have the special representatives who have been discussing these issues, and we are in the second phase of the process. So let's see where that takes us.
But there is no clarity, because even now, as you said rightly, yes, the special representatives have met, but beyond the semantics, they haven't really moved forward. What is the problem? Is there a problem because China has been asking for territory or territorial swap in Arunachal Pradesh? What is the real problem?
Well, boundary issues are difficult problems. They can be intractable, and something that has not as yet been resolved since all these years when we have differed over whether the boundary lies, you don't expect it to be resolved overnight, do you? It is a slow process, and we are discussing the manner in how to resolve it.
One of the problems for practitioners of foreign policy like you are, you're the top diplomat of India, is that too much of domestic politics often binds you. You've had a problem when it comes to Sri Lanka from the parties in Tamil Nadu, then The West Bengal Chief Minister created a problem for you. You were about to ink the Teesta Accord. So do you think that there is a way out, that foreign policy has to be unshackled from domestic policy in some way? And what are you doing about it?
Foreign policy is influenced by several considerations. Domestic policy has to be one of them. And that's not just Indian foreign policy, that's foreign policy anywhere in the world. I defy you to find me one country where foreign policy does not take into account domestic considerations. But having said that, let me also say that foreign policy is finally the prerogative of the Government of India here in New Delhi. And while arriving at our priorities, our objectives, we take into consideration and balance out several aspects that need to be taken into consideration. And that's what we do.
You got too much of pressure from Italy on the Marines issue. What is the situation now? Do you still feel that the matter is under the purview of court and there's nothing much that the Ministry of External Affairs can do in that?
It is under purview of the court.
No, but the Italians have been putting a lot of pressure on you.
That's all right. If the Italians want to put pressure, they can, but it is under the purview of the court.
What about your priority? Obviously you've said, I remember when you were taking over, you told me in an interview that neighborhood will be your priority. Is there anything that you've been the Foreign Secretary for the last 8 months, any revision of your priorities list?
Absolutely not. I think that our neighborhood will always be our priority. It is the area that has the immediate and the most critical consequence for us. And it's been 8 months since I became Foreign Secretary. And I'm happy to say that I have visited every single neighboring country with the exception of one. And I look forward to visiting that as well when circumstances are appropriate. It has been important because in the course of my interactions with my interlocutors in neighboring countries, it has brought home to me once again just how important relations with neighboring countries are in terms of economic interlinkages, in terms of people-to-people contacts, in terms of the critical role that India plays as the largest economy in the region, and the manner in which its economic growth and what is happening within India itself is influencing the trajectory of democracy and of economic growth in all our neighboring countries.
Do you think with the political leadership largely busy with the elections, it is left to top diplomats like you to run the foreign policy, and it's a difficult time for you because you have to take difficult decisions often, isn't it?
You know, foreign policy pretty much looks after itself because it's set on lines that have been determined by consensus over such a long period of time since our independence. We do what our foreign policy priorities require us to do. That has been the case when there were no elections, and that's the case now even when elections are being fought. What's different?
Afghanistan is an issue which is very important for India. President Karzai recently said and blamed Pakistan for attacks in Kabul, and obviously India has had credible evidence about Pakistani intelligence agency being behind the attack on Indian embassy in Kabul, where one of your diplomats and several others were killed. What are you doing? What has been done to tell Pakistan and international community very clearly that this cannot go on?
We're all aware that terrorist attacks in Afghanistan, including on the Indian mission and the consulates, have had external elements to them. We are in touch with our friends in Afghanistan as well as in the international community in working with them towards meeting a very real threat to our interests and the interests of all friendly countries in the region.
But do you think that with countries like Pakistan, diplomacy alone can work, or do you require something more than just a diplomatic measure to really tackle them?
You know, there are a whole series of issues that have to be dealt with, and we are dealing with them. We're dealing with them in collaboration with our international friends and partners.
One of the things or a problem that you must have faced is that you really have a very small foreign office and foreign service. So what are you going to do about that? I know that you've been getting experts, domain experts from all over, but do you think that you need to really enlarge India's foreign service to do justice to the kind of work that has been done in Indian diplomacy?
Well, first, I think that we are doing justice to the kind of work that needs to be done in Indian diplomacy. Second, I think that we have all the domain experts in the Indian Foreign Service. Our Foreign Service officers are actually shaping the discourse in many of the issues that they deal with. But having said that, let me say that we are getting a great number of people to help us out because of our shortage in numbers from other services. We have a good number of deputationists. There is an expansion plan whereby the Indian Foreign Service will expand over the next few years. And after that, if we feel that there is a need for even more numbers, and I think that there might be, then we will look at that as well.
Okay. What about, just to wrap up, how will you manage the transition? Because obviously a new government may take over in May this year. How difficult it is for you as a bureaucrat to manage the transition between one government to another?
I don't think it should be difficult at all, because the principles of foreign policy remain constant. This is something on which there has been consensus. It's not the first time that there is a new government. Thanks to hallowed democratic traditions that our country is blessed in having, there have been several new governments and several transitions. And the bureaucracy has always managed. I don't think it should be a difficulty at all.
Foreign Secretary, thank you very much for talking to Headlines today.